Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Shannon Tyler, and I'm the Teacher Enrichment Program Manager at the Center for Excellence in Education. I'll be your host for today's session, Green Futures, Environmental Careers and Opportunities with the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. I'm so glad you can join us today as we explore the exciting and meaningful work happening in the field of environmental protection and sustainability. Whether you're a teacher helping students explore STEM career paths or a student curious about future opportunities, today's session will highlight how science, technology, and policy come together to protect our environment and create a more sustainable future. We have a fantastic speaker today from the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality, or the VADEQ, with us today, who will share her experiences, insights, and advice for those interested in environmental careers. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we dive into today's topic, I'd like to share a little background about our organization, the Center for Excellence in Education, or CEE. CEE was founded in 1983 by the late Admiral A.C. Rickover and Joanne DeGennaro with the mission to nurture high-achieving students to careers of excellence and leadership in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and to encourage collaboration between education, industry, and government. We're proud to offer a variety of cost-free programs that support both teachers and students across the country. These include the Research Science Institute, the USA Biology Olympiad, the Teacher Enrichment Program, and STEM Lyceums. Each of these programs help strengthen STEM education and inspire the next generation of inventors, scientists, and leaders, which ties in perfectly with our focus today in this webinar. I'll share a little more about these programs on the next slides. So let's start with our first two, the Research Science Institute, or RSI, and the USA Bio Olympiad, or USABO. RSI is CEE's flagship program, a 6-week cost-free summer science or summer research program hosted at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. It brings together some of the brightest high school students from across the United States and around the world to conduct original, cutting-edge scientific research under the mentorship of top scientists and researchers. Students experience the full research process from reviewing literature and designing experiments to presenting their findings, and many go on to make real contributions to the scientific community. Applications for RSI are currently open and will close on December 10th. If you have any students who are interested, or if you're interested or an interested student yourself, I encourage you to apply. Next, we have the USA Bio Olympiad, or USABO, which is another prestigious CEE program that identifies, inspires, and empowers the nation's most talented young biologists. Through a series of rigorous online exams and a national level training camp, the top 4 students represent the U.S. at the International Biology Olympiad, competing with peers from around the world. Applications for the USABO are also open now and will close on November 8th. I encourage you to reach out for more information and to get those applications in if you are interested. The next 2 programs I'd like to highlight are the Teacher Enrichment Program, or TEP, which is hosting today's webinar, and STEM Lyceums. First, we'll do the Teacher Enrichment Program, which provides cost-free professional development opportunities for middle and high school STEM educators across the country. Through webinars, workshops, and networking events, TEP helps teachers connect with experts, access classroom-ready resources, and stay informed about emerging fields and career pathways. Our goal is to equip educators with tools and inspiration to help students see how science applies to real-world challenges and opportunities. Last but certainly not least, we have STEM Lyceums, which is a virtual club for high school students that meets at least once a month to explore STEM career pathways with professionals from a wide range of disciplines. Each session gives students a chance to hear directly from experts working in fields such as renewable energy, environmental protection, biotechnology, and engineering, helping them imagine how their own interests could translate into future careers. Together, TEP and STEM Lyceums reflect CE's commitment to inspiring and connecting the next generation of scientists, engineers, and environmental leaders. To learn more about our programs, please visit our website at www.cee.org. I am very excited to introduce our speaker for today's webinar, Dr. Gwendolin McCrae. Dr. McCrae is a regional coordinator working on outreach, education, and community engagement for the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. She completed her undergraduate degree at Macalester College in St. Paul, Minnesota, and went on to earn a master's degree in geography, focusing on Indigenous Peoples lands right, and a Ph.D. in geography and development studies and social change at the University of Minnesota. Her research and writing have explored the nexus between our natural and social worlds, and she has nearly 20 years of experience in education, training, and social science research. In her current role at the DEQ, Dr. McCrae engages with local communities to share information, how they can participate in public processes, and contribute to environmental decision making. We're thrilled to have her with us today to share her experiences, insights, and guidance on environmental careers and opportunities. So, with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to you, Dr. McCrae. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Shannon. And thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be presenting tonight about the opportunities that are available in state government. And I think that that is also applicable to other kinds of, other levels of government as well. So let me just give me a few seconds to share my screen and my slides. All right. And hopefully this is sharing the right screen. Are we good?
We're good.
Okay, great. Um, so yeah, so as Shannon said, I work now at the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. Before I started at DEQ, I spent a lot of years in the majority of my career in teaching and research and education. So a lot of the work that I was doing, especially in the past 10 years or so, has really been focused on student development and helping students to make their way into, through education and into their careers. So I spent a lot of time, actually almost, I think it was 8 years working at the Northern Virginia Community College. So I was really working with those students who are coming right out of high school and starting their college careers and getting the background that they needed to excel in the things that they were looking forward to. So I've been at DEQ now for about 4 years. And as Shannon mentioned, my background is not in a technical natural science, it's in a social science, and it's really focused on that social side. And so even though I am in a state environmental regulatory agency, there are a lot of career opportunities for all kinds of backgrounds and like lots of different kinds of careers and jobs that people are doing. So I'm really excited to share that with you tonight. Now, let me make sure that this is going to forward my slides as I want them to. Hold on. Is it going to work? There we go. Okay. Um, so tonight I will start with just an overview of what the work of a state environmental regulatory agency is. I will be focusing specifically on Virginia, but a lot of the things that I'll be talking about you'll find them in other states in the United States, and you'll find them at other levels of government all over the place. So I'll be talking about that. I will be talking about some opportunities that we have, different kinds of career paths and different educational backgrounds that folks have in order to get into those career paths. And I will also talk about some of the resources that Virginia DEQ has that can be used by educators or by students who are interested in environmental science and environmental policy, environmental protection. So to start with, DEQ is just one agency, which is in a family of agencies in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We are part of the Secretariat of Natural and Historic Resources, which also includes conservation and recreation, wildlife resources, marine resources, and historic resources. There are also in some of our other secretariats, other agencies that are very connected to the work that we do, such as the Department of Energy, the Department of Forestry, Department of Agriculture, and the Department of Health. So in various, in different states, you'll find that there are sort of different configurations of what those state agencies might look like. And then you'll find also, uh, similar agencies at the local level, at the federal level. But they all work together and, overall they'll be doing some very similar work. So at DEQ, our agency has over 800 people who work in the agency who work to apply, the most up-to-date science and laws and policies so that we can help to protect Virginia's environment. We have three kind of main ways that we organize our programs in we call them different media. So that's going to be air quality, water quality, and land protection. And then we also have a lot of programs that cross over all of those. And that's some of the things that I'll be talking about tonight. Oh, actually, I had one other thing I wanted to add to that. So I think that it's really important to think about the kind of the vision that DEQ has, and I will talk about our mission and vision later. But it's really, I think that one of the things that's great about working in an environmental agency is, we're doing very technical work, but most of us are here because we have a really clear vision for what we would like our clean environment to be for our fellow Virginians. So our agency is set up to have both a central office, which is located in Richmond, which is the capital of Virginia, and also 6 regional offices. So those offices, and you'll find this in a lot of agencies, those offices have slightly different functions. So our central office is really going to be focused on data analysis, on planning, on policy, and then our regional offices are really focused on implementing those policies and making sure that the on the ground that things are going the way that they're supposed to according to policy, according to law. You'll also see that each region at least in Virginia, each region has, different characteristics, different things that make them special. So in our state, for example, the Valley Regional Office, which is the one in orange, is our Shenandoah Valley region, and that has a lot of agriculture. So there are lots of environmental issues that are associated with agriculture, more so than in some of our other regions. Our Tidewater region, which is the one that you'll see in dark blue at the bottom right, that is the part of our state that borders on the Chesapeake Bay and the Atlantic Ocean. And so there are a lot of marine and coastal issues that are happening there. So there are just different issues that our regional offices are focusing on. And that does mean that there are different opportunities for, different kinds of specialties for the folks who work in those regions. So our mission is to protect and enhance the environment of Virginia to promote the health and well-being of our citizens, residents, and visitors. I think it's really important to for a regulatory agency also to highlight that last bit with, in accordance with applicable laws and regulations. So I think that's a really important thing to note about the kinds of careers and the kinds of work that a regulatory agency does. It really is focused on doing the work that we do in order to implement the laws and regulations. There are some times where folks might want us to do something different, but we do have to follow the law. We do have to follow the regulation. We kind of can't do a whole lot. We don't necessarily have that much leeway to work outside of that. And so, one of the things that I do in my role in community outreach and communication is to help people understand, the residents and citizens of Virginia, that sometimes their best recourse is to talk to their lawmakers because their lawmakers can change the laws that we then implement. And so that's a really important piece of the work that we do as well, is just to help people understand kind of what the like a civic education, right? To really understand how their government works for them and where the different decision points are and where they can have an impact. And sometimes that's with us or a different regulatory agency, and sometimes that's with their lawmakers or with other kind of civil society organizations as well. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of the specifics about the ways that, the work that myself and my colleagues do. So what exactly does it mean when we are talking about protecting the environment? So one of the things that we do is, I have a lot of colleagues who do a lot of field work. So we have some of our folks are out in boats every other day. They are going out to do water monitoring. They are, they may be going to a stream, to a lake, um, we may have folks who are doing air quality monitoring. And so they are going to, our air quality monitors are like pretty technical machines that our air quality monitoring staff will go to on a regular basis to gather the data that they need in order to kind of just get a baseline. How are things going, right? How clean is our water? How clean is our air? What are the things that might be impacting that? And then they will take that data and turn it over to some of our other staff who will do the data analysis. We have a lot of staff who do environmental permitting and plan review. This is one of the functions that a lot of people think of when they think of a regulatory agency. And that is it is a big part of what we do, but it's by far not the only thing that we do. But that is, it's very important. We have a lot of staff who will also be in the field. doing inspections, and this can be inspections everything from a corner gas station to a really, complex multi-function manufacturing campus. So we have lots and lots of different types of inspections, compliance enforcement. We have a lot of folks who have a background in law, who may be working in our compliance and enforcement sectors as well. We have trainers. So we have, a lot of folks who have an educational background or who may take their technical expertise and apply that to training other people. So for example, we have certification programs for wastewater treatment operators. We have certification programs for folks who do delineation of wetlands. If you need to go out into the field and determine exactly where on your map a wetland is, where are the borders of it. We have certifications for that. We do public education as well. And in Virginia, we have some specialized programs that are really specific to the conditions here in Virginia. So we have a coastal zone management program that is actually a multi-agency initiative, but it's kind of seated and the lead agency is DEQ, as well as the Chesapeake Bay program. So the Chesapeake Bay program is a federal program. It encompasses 9 states and the District of Columbia. And there's a lot of work that DEQ does along with other agencies in Virginia and across those other states to protect and improve the Chesapeake Bay. We also have lots of folks who do data analysis. So we have, statisticians, mathematicians, engineers, GIS analysts who do, who get a lot of the data that may come from our monitoring programs or from our permitting programs and crunch that data to help us understand what is going on and to help with our planning process. So we do have a lot of staff who do, who write plans, future plans. They may be 2-year plans, 5-year plans. For the Chesapeake Bay, it's usually even longer, who are working on understanding what the environmental conditions are now, what the impacts are likely to be in the future, and planning for that so that we can be as best prepared as we can. Community outreach, of course, that's where I do a lot of my work. Some of our planners do community outreach with local governments. So the photograph that you see here is a photograph of DEQ staff working with staff of a local government to do water planning. So they're looking at the water use needs of their communities into the future, what kind of water quantity we have, both groundwater and surface water, and making plans for fair and equitable use of water into the future. A really important one is an important job that we have at DEQ is our pollution response team. So sometimes when we see environmental pollution in the news, that's because there have been incidents, right? There have been things that accidents, train derailments, or factory, incidents that cause a spill. And so someone has to respond to that. We have to be able to have a rapid response, a crisis team, to understand what's going on, to coordinate cleanup, to find the responsible parties. And so we have a big pollution response team that does that. And that's actually a really, a very important part of the work that we do. Um, and we have a lot of policy work. So we have folks who are working with our lawmakers, working with local and state and federal elected officials to understand laws and policies, to work with lawmakers to understand what the effects might be of proposed legislation. We also in Virginia, and I don't think that this is common across all states necessarily, but it's not uncommon either. In Virginia, we have citizen boards that help to set regulations and sometimes to respond to big issues and concerns that residents may have. So we have a citizen board for air pollution control, for water pollution control, as well as for waste management. And so those citizen boards are appointed boards where people who are not employees of DEQ serve on those boards to be able to, set regulations, answer questions, and have that good interaction with our residents at Virginia. And then finally, we also have, pollution prevention and impact review. So these are the staff that kind of take the bigger picture of what's going on. So they may have a proposal of a big project, and they are able to think about what the environmental impact is going to be, and respond back to those proposals, or also to, make plans, work with non-government organizations and local governments to help set up recycling or composting systems. And so that's a really important part of some of the kind of what we think of as environmental enhancement programs that we do at DEQ. All right. So as I mentioned, at DEQ, we kind of organize the work that we do into the three media. So we have air quality, water quality, and land protection as kind of the three main media sections. In air quality, we also include our greenhouse gases program and our renewable energy, which for Virginia is mostly focused on solar energy. So some of the other renewable energy projects or types of projects are regulated by other agencies. But at DEQ, we do regulate some of the like large scale solar projects. Our water quality and water supply section is probably the biggest one, and that's really focused on water everywhere from surface water to groundwater to talking about monitoring and also planning, as well as land protection and revitalization. So I'm going to get into a little bit more detail. I don't want to um, I don't want to spend all my time talking about this. I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions. But there's so much to talk about. So in addition to those three media, we also have, as I mentioned, these other programs that kind of cut across all of them. So when I started at the Department of Environmental Quality, I started in the Office of Environmental Justice. And when you're talking about environmental justice, that's really a place-based program that's focusing on specific places and what the impacts of environmental issues might be in specific places, and that's all environmental issues. So that's across air, water, and land. You have the same thing if you're looking um, at our pollution response program. So you may have a pollution incident, and perhaps it is, an incident that seems to be primarily a question of an air emission, but it may also impact the water. It may also impact the land. And so you have to be able, the folks in those kind of cross-media programs have to be able to have a good understanding of all of the media in order to understand what the impacts might be across all three. So just really quickly, I'm going to jump into some of the kind of some of the specific backgrounds and turn it towards like the educational preparation that my colleagues have. But I want to just mention the different types, kind of the breadth of the different types of programs. So in our air and renewable energy program, as I mentioned, you're going to have the air quality monitoring and the data. The air quality forecasting, which is another service that we provide. So if you've seen ever in your weather app where you can look to see what's the air quality forecast, a lot of that data that's going to come from data that is gathered both by the Department of Environmental Quality, by EPA, and by other states as well. In Virginia, in Northern Virginia in particular, we have a vehicle emissions program that is run that's very specific to Northern Virginia, which is the part of Virginia that's right next to DC. It's in the Washington, DC metro area. And because it's such a large metro area, vehicle emissions can be a big issue for air quality. And so we have a program that controls vehicle emissions that's run out of our Department of Environmental Quality as well. For our water programs is the largest family of programs. So it's of all the media that we have, this one probably has the most programs and the most staff who work in it. For the water quality programs, they are often enforcing the Clean Water Act, which is a federal law. Actually, for the air program, they're enforcing the Clean Air Act. In both of those cases, the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality has been delegated that authority from the federal Environmental Protection Agency. But we have lots, as I mentioned, just lots and lots of different types of water programs. I've talked about a little bit of them, but I haven't talked about stormwater. Stormwater is, probably one of the reasons why the water programs are such a big deal because the rain falls everywhere and then it runs off. And so that's always an issue. Um, Land application and beneficial reuse, which is related to wastewater. So there's just all kinds of water programs that we have at the Department of Environmental Quality. And then also our land protection and revitalization. So generally, this is the delegation of the Federal Resource Conservation and Recovery Act that addresses waste. So we do that both solid waste and hazardous waste. But also, we have a big petroleum tank program because there's lots and lots of both above ground and underground petroleum storage tanks. And those can be a real issue, especially when you're looking at historical underground storage tanks. Sometimes they've been there, they were buried, you forget that they're there. And so we have our program that addresses that. And also the land remediation program, which is for me one of my favorite things that an environmental agency can do, which is to do cleanup. And so you find if you have a site that has had environmental impacts but it's no longer in use in its original use, and you want to use it for something else, but it needs to be cleaned up first to make sure that it's safe for people to use that for that particular use. Our land remediation program is the program that helps usually local governments to do that kind of cleanup so that they can reuse an old factory site and turn it into a park or whatever it might be, right? That's just an example. We have lots, and as I mentioned, we have lots of other kinds of programs. Some of these are the cross-media programs that I mentioned, but I also just want to point out that we have a lot of staff that are support staff who did not necessarily start with an environmental science degree, right, or a natural sciences degree, but they are still doing really important work in the agency. So that is including things like our purchasing and human resources, office management, IT. These are all really important functions that our agency would not be able to do the work that we do without those people as well. So there are, no matter what a student might be interested in as far as their particular aptitudes and interests in education, if they are wanting to go into an environmental field, there are lots of ways that they can get into that environmental field. It's really, really not limited to biology and chemistry, right? There's lots of different paths. All right, and I'm going to try and do about 10 more minutes so that there's plenty of time for questions. I wanted to show you just a list of not comprehensive list of the different kinds of environmental and other educational backgrounds that that the staff at DEQ have. I'm not going to read these, obviously, but these are bachelor's and master's degrees that our staff has. The environmental science and environmental studies is a big one. But it is absolutely not the only way to get into doing environmental work. I will also mention that in the Commonwealth of Virginia, a bachelor's degree is not a requirement of working at the Department of Environmental Quality. So for state work, absolutely experience can be substituted for education. So it is not a kind of a minimum requirement to have a bachelor's degree. So it is possible if, someone wanted to work, got into this work in a different way, whatever that might be, if it's some kind of, apprenticeship or they started working for a contractor or some other way that they're getting into if they're doing this environmental work and they can show that in their experience, they don't need to have a bachelor's degree. Now, that being said, lots of times a college degree is a good way to get a background on things. Now, the other thing that I think is great about DEQ is that there are lots of entry-level positions and career pathways to move forward. I would say that, there's a lot of my colleagues who have moved from different agencies from the private sector into working in public service. And lots of folks who started at DEQ, pretty early in their careers and stayed there. We have lots and lots of folks who end up in leadership at the agency who've worked for the agency for 20 or 30 years. And they have that really, broad base and good experience. And so that's definitely something that can be, for some people, that is really an appealing career path. Um, but we do have lots and lots of entry-level positions, and many of those have a very clear career progression. So I've actually been working with our HR team on what some of those career paths look like, right? Like when you start at an entry level, what are the things that you need to be able to do, and how do you advance in that position and then put yourself into a good position to be able to move on, whether it's within the agency or outside of the agency. Some of our roles are really technical, they're very data driven and analytical. Others are more about synthesizing information, doing planning and project management, and all of them focus on enhancing and protecting the environment. So I wanted to just mention, I know that I understand that a lot of the audience for this webinar may be middle school and high school teachers, but if you have any connections with, former students who are in college, we do have some paid internships. We have a paid internship program. And it's a really, it's a great program. It's a potentially a 2-year program. So college sophomores and juniors could come back for 2 summers in a row. One of the advantages of that is that often in the first year, they'll get a really broad base idea about different kinds of things that you can do in our agency. And the second year, they could pick one program and work for a summer, really, learning about what that entry-level job would look like. And I know that at the regional office where I work, which is in Woodbridge, Virginia, I have a coworker who started as an intern, and then she was able to move that into a full-time job. So typically our applications will open in January, and we will do, the whole process should be ready, but, confirmed by March, and then the internship is a summer internship, so it would go June to August. So I do encourage you, if you have connections with any of your former students who are in college who might be interested, have them take a look, because it's a great opportunity. So now I want to turn to just some resources that as teachers you might find helpful. I can share this. This has links to it, but I don't think I necessarily want to jump into the links specifically. But I will share the slides, and so then you can have the links later. But all of the data that our agency collects is available for anyone to use. So if you are working with students who want to get into a database, they want to understand what water quality monitoring data looks like, they want to get in there and pull our data out and kind of play around with it, they are welcome to do that. So the Data Hub and GIS is a page where you can both get links to data sets, just raw data, but also to our GIS tools. So some of the main GIS tools that we have, the Environmental Data Mapper is a GIS tool that focuses on the environmental data from Virginia DEQ. So you can run analyses, do all kinds of queries and things for using the actual information. So I find when I was teaching at university, I would often use this tool or a similar tool to have students, maybe do some research about a particular area and have them really kind of hone in on what was going on, what were the issues, what are the conditions on the ground, and that's something that you can do with that GIS tool. We also have a Virginia EJ Screen Plus, which is a tool that incorporates the environmental data as well as layers about environmental justice communities and other kind of social science issue data layers. So you can find community outreach, you can find those kinds of resources as well. We just launched our Virginia Excess Food Opportunities Map, which is a map that you can use to find local composting services near you. So that is really great. We have an initiative that's coming out about food waste and minimizing food waste, for all kinds of reasons, but for the especially for the minimization, kind of pollution prevention of greenhouse gases as well. So there's all kinds of databases and dashboards that you can share with your students, or use them yourself to find information that you might need for lesson plans. In addition to that, we do have a series of webinars that are designed for a general audience. So I think it's they're absolutely high school level, or even kind of precocious middle schoolers would probably get something out of the topics that we cover in our webinars. We have one webinar left for this year. That's the one on the bottom right, the grants webinar. That's going to be particularly interesting for nonprofit organizations and local governments probably, so that may not be as interesting for you and your students. But a lot of the other ones, we do have recordings of all of these webinars. And some of them are just really interesting um, environmental topics. My favorite one is the landfill. I have two favorite ones. The landfills 101, because landfills and just waste are a big issue, and it's something that we really need to, we don't think about it very much, but it's really important. It has big environmental impacts. And that landfills 101 really kind of covers the basics of understanding what some of the waste issues are. And also the Chesapeake Bay. So the Chesapeake Bay, if you're not from Virginia, you might not be as keyed into the importance of the Chesapeake Bay, but it's a really important um, you know, cultural, social, economic landmark for us here in Virginia. And there's been a lot of really important work that has gone on to improve the Chesapeake Bay water quality, and they've made a lot of strides. So that's a really great one too. But I do encourage you to take a look at those if that's something that you might find interesting, if you have students who are interested in any particular environmental topics. And we are always taking suggestions. So if there's something that you think your students might want to know, we do have forms to fill out to make suggestions for future webinar topics as well. All right, so I think I made it to almost 5:40. Um, so I can maybe stop and answer some questions, and then if there are, if there's uh, not a lot of questions right now, I can also go back and maybe give some more detailed information about some of our programs if that would be of interest to people.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed seeing the resources that you guys have and you sharing the additional information that you did. So thank you. Let's see. So again, we'll now open the floor to questions. So please feel free to submit them in the Q&A and the chat. We did have one come into the chat and it says, have you heard about declining Manhattan population in Chesapeake Bay as a result of commercial harvesting?
Yeah, absolutely. That is definitely a big issue. So this is again maybe not something that folks are super familiar with if they're not from the region. But yeah, the Menhaden population of fish is a very important fishery, but it's also a very important part of the ecology and ecosystem of the Chesapeake Bay. I do know that a lot of the other states in the Chesapeake Bay have different regulations for fisheries than Virginia does. I do believe that Virginia is the only state in the Chesapeake Bay region that still does close to shore harvesting. Um, I don't know. I'm not in the Chesapeake Bay program, so I don't know, I don't have all the details about it at hand, but it's definitely a really important issue. And I would encourage anyone who's interested to take a look at the Chesapeake Bay program plan. There is the plan that they had in place for improvements, and they had, lots of different indicators for environmental improvements that they were looking at. That original plan, which started in 2014, I mean, it went back before that, but the most recent one started in 2014 and was aiming for 2025 as the date by which to reach the goals. Some of the goals have been met, some of them have not, and they have revised that plan and are ready, that action plan, and are ready to move forward with it. They should have a draft ready for public view in December of 2025. I would encourage anyone who's interested to take a look at the action plan that they are proposing. And definitely if commercial fisheries and menhaden populations are something that's of interest, that's also something again to talk to your lawmakers about because uh, our marine resources Department of Marine Resources is going to be, following and implementing the laws that we have on the books in Virginia. So it's a really, really important topic. The Chesapeake Bay Foundation is also a great resource. to look to for some of that information. And they do a lot of public outreach. They're a good another good resource.
Thank you for both the question and the answer. We had one come into the Q&A. It says, how does one or what is the process for sourcing the VADQ personnel to participate in educational opportunities such as guest speaker roles, career fair exposures, both middle and high school, informational interview opportunities, etc.?
Oh, that's a great question. So I think that one of the ways that you can do that is to just contact our communications department or just the main DEQ um, email that you'll find on our webpage, and our communications program would be able to put you into contact with someone. They do some outreach depending on what kind of outreach you're looking for. It may be a very particular program that you would want to get in touch with. So I do think that kind of our main phone number or email is probably the best place to start. But for things like career fairs, we do have staff in our human resources department who do go out to career fairs. Um, you know, I think that Shannon probably just found me on the website and reached out, and so you can definitely do that as well. Our Office of Environmental Justice. Which is it currently a little bit smaller than it has been in the past, but we do still have an Office of Environmental Justice Program Manager. And she is a great person to talk to do community outreach as well. I know that one of the priorities of that office is to do things like community events, career fairs sometimes, but like community events, school events, things like that. So definitely do reach out because if we have the staff to do it, we love to do that kind of outreach.
No, I love that. It's a good way for teachers to be able to get involved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that is a great thing for teachers to do if it's something that you're interested in, especially for maybe like biology classes, our water quality monitoring programs have a um, participatory science or citizen science programs in water quality monitoring. And there's a lot of different resources that you can use. They have training, they have like toolkits and things like that. And there's different levels that you can do it at. So I know that sometimes if you're teaching a class, you may not have the resources and the time to like do an audited scientific processes to make sure that the data is the highest quality. But you can just do water quality monitoring as an educational event, but you can still get access to those resources. And so I would check out the on the website our water quality monitoring. I think it's usually called Citizen Water Quality Monitoring is the name of the program. It's not limited to citizens. Anyone who lives in Virginia
Oh,
can do it. Um, so those programs can be great, and they're something that can be a lot of fun for students to do because depending on what kind of water quality monitoring you want to do, you might be measuring temperature or turbidity, or you might be scooping up the benthic organisms that are living in the stream or whatever it might be. So there's lots of opportunities to do interesting science that way as well.
very cool. Thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about um, the policy side of things and how that can
Yeah.
kind of play a role and maybe be another opportunity for either teachers or students?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that is, I think, really important for everyone to understand is um, how government actually works, right? So, I mean, in a sense, we kind of have this sort of, I know that before I started working at DEQ, had a very limited understanding of the way that government agencies actually operate. And it can seem from the outside like it's like a black box, right? Like it's not super clear necessarily. And I know that our agency has been working to be more transparent about the way that things work, but it is a process. So I would say that as far as um, understanding like let me take there's a couple things actually. So you asked specifically about policy. And so one of the things that our policy group will do is to work with elected officials and lawmakers to help them understand what the environmental impacts of proposed legislation might be. And so, for as a career pathway, that's actually a really interesting one because you kind of you might have that like legal or political science background, but also be thinking of it in terms of planning, project management, and environmental science. So that can be a really interesting thing. Kind of more broadly, right? Like to take a step back and to think about just for anyone who might be interested in understanding how government works, how policies get implemented. There's a couple of different ways that you can do that. One of them is to keep an eye out on what the public participation opportunities are, both, for DEQ for any government agency. So in Virginia, we have a website for the Commonwealth of Virginia government called the Virginia Regulatory Town Hall. And on that page, which is a state government page, you can find information about proposed policies and regulations, about public meetings, about all kinds of things like that. And so that might be a good, one way that a student or a teacher might be able to kind of dig into what are the things that are going on in your region. So you could see if there's a proposed permit that is going to be in your town, for example. You can see if there's a regulation that is coming up for renewal. Because some of the kind of environmental governance of of Virginia, of any locality really. Um, some of that is, we just make general rules, and as long as someone follows the general rules, they can do something within that. And so if I wanted to open a composting site, I don't necessarily have to get special permission as long as I look and see what the general rules are and I follow the rules. And then I can just say, I might have to submit a notification to DEQ saying, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm putting here, here's how I'm following the rules. But we wouldn't necessarily have like an individual decision made about that. Other things have, they're have a big enough impact that you have to make a decision about them every single time. And um, so I think that one of the things that you could do like in a classroom, for example, is you could use that environmental data mapper, some of those GIS tools that I was showing you, and kind of focus on your town, right? Or focus on a neighborhood and see what are the things that are happening in that neighborhood. Is there, what are the facilities that are here? You'd be surprised actually how many environmental permits are in one neighborhood. There might be the school probably has environmental permits for air. If they have a generator, they probably have to have an air permit. If they have if it's not connected to like if it's in a smaller town that's not connected to a big wastewater treatment system, they might have their own wastewater permit, right? So there's just like things that you wouldn't necessarily think about, but you can actually get some really interesting information about what's going on just in your local area by doing something like looking at that at those GIS tools.
No, thank you, because that was kind of my point of wondering, asking the question of, at least for myself, I'll speak for myself only,
Mhm.
that when I think about these things, the policy side is inside that I usually think of. I know there's regulations there, but exactly how many are in even a small area, I would probably be surprised. So,
Yeah, yeah.
thank
There's a lot there.
you. I don't see any more questions coming in, and that's okay. I do have one more thing that I just wanted to kind of talk about quickly because I thought it was really interesting to see this slide that you had where there are just people from all different type of educational backgrounds and fields that are coming together at the DEQ and doing amazing work. So, I know, like you said, these people are coming from all different fields and things like that, but are there any skills or educational backgrounds even that you think are most valuable for people interested in these kinds of careers?
That's a really good question. Let me go back to that slide. So yeah, I think that I would say that as far as um, skills go, attention to detail is a good one. right? And I know that not all of us are naturally gifted that way, but it's something that we can work on and get better at. Um, because when you are talking about, writing a permit or crafting a policy or like crafting a regulation, you have to be really, you have to be paying attention to the details and be thinking about, okay, if I do this, what's that impact going to be? How is it going to impact all these other things? And that's a really important part of the work that we do is just making sure that we are being consistent, that we are paying attention to detail. I think that that one is really important. I also think that from my point of view, as someone who does like the community work, right? The community outreach and the communication and trying to make sure that people in Virginia understand and get their questions answered and understand like the workings of the government working for them is to have good skills at communication skills, being able to talk to people, being able to get a question from someone who may not have a very technical background, but that doesn't mean that they don't have a valid concern about something that might be impacting them, their community, their family. And so being able to, have good skills in kind of understanding what people are asking, and be able to communicate that in a way that is, it may be a very technical answer, but you have to be able to communicate it in a way that people understand. And I think that that is hugely important. And it's something that we definitely encourage in my colleagues. I encourage them to work on that because it's really important.
No, again, I love that because I think that also is just a skill that is good to have in life in general, even if, you don't go the environmental route
Yeah,
or, whatever. It's
absolutely.
just a good
Yeah,
skill to have.
absolutely.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, what advice would you give to a student that it knows they're passionate about the environment but don't really know where to start?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've really focused on like government regulation and regulatory agencies in this presentation. There are so many environmental careers that are possible, and they might intersect with regulation. But I think that, the advice that I would give is to find the thing that you're passionate about, right? To focus to do the thing that you're passionate about, whether that is, maybe it is an engineering field and that can be turned into, work in a regulatory agency. It could be turned into work at an environmental consulting firm that is designing projects and doing their best to make sure that they are, like designing like environmentally friendly buildings or buildings, development sites. If you're really, really interested in ecology, go for it, right? Like there may be research careers ahead of you, or they may be things like, like what we do in at DEQ, where we have, folks who have a background in ecology who are doing data analysis and trying to understand again, like the impact of, specific um, uh, inputs into the environment and what impact that's going to have on different parts of the ecological system. So I think that, yeah, the advice that I would give is just follow what you think is really, find the things that you think are interesting, right? And I think also don't be afraid um, to learn broadly. So, you may know that you're super, super interested in chemical engineering, and that's the thing that just lights you up, right? But also, don't be afraid to go take that political science class, right? Like that is also, that can open up new ideas for you, and it can sometimes help you to make connections. And I think that the kind of the broader of an education that you have, the more prepared you will be to solve tricky problems, right? And to jump into situations that seem like, that really need a solution, right? And sometimes we have to be able to think really creatively about what the solutions are. And kind of the more broadly, the broader education you have, the easier it will be for you to think creatively like that.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciated learning how
Yeah.
vast the opportunities are, and it just really sounds like there's something there for every student. So I really encourage all educators in the audience to please reach out, and if there is something that you're interested in, ask the question if you have it, or, get in contact. So thank you again, Dr. McCrae, for being here with us and sharing your insights with us today. We'll go ahead and wrap it up. Before we wrap up, I'd like to give a special thank you to our sponsors for their generous support. Their contributions make it possible for us to offer these cost-free webinars and provide high-quality professional development and resources to educators and students. We truly appreciate their partnership and commitment to advancing STEM education and environmental awareness. Lastly, again, thank you to all of you in the audience for attending today's webinar. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. I kindly ask that you take a minute to fill out our post-webinar survey. Your feedback is incredibly valuable and helps us improve future events. You can access the survey using the QR code. And for us that are here today, I'm going to launch a quick poll. It's only 6 questions, very quick. Please just click through them and send in your responses. And last but not least, again, thank you so much to our speaker, Dr. McCrae, for sharing your expertise. And we will send a notice when the recording of today's webinar is available so you can revisit it and share it with your colleagues. Be on the lookout for our future events, and we really hope to see you there. Thank you all, everyone, again.
Thank you.